my own Garms.
Yes, my mates, what's good? What's happening with you lot? I'm Thomas Griffin and this is My Own Garms. On this week's episode, I'm chatting with Popular Front's Jake Hanrahan. Jake's a journalist and documentary filmmaker, working mainly through his own Popular Front grassroots media channel. Go and look him up on YouTube and Insta, but make sure you type it in full because they're always getting shadow banned. I think it's popular@popular.front on Insta. I've done a load of audio work for Jake in the past. He's a top lad and properly gives a shit about what he does. He's a self-professed little fashion boy on the sly, so I'm buzzing to ask him about his own garms and the clothes he's encountered on journalistic trips to conflict zones around the world. Popular Front's got a Patreon site where supporters support the work they do with monthly donations. We've got one too for My Own Garms, but no one's been that arse with it so far, so if you want to donate the price of a bev or something, then get over to patreon.com/myowngarms and slip us a £5. It'll really help us make more episodes. Nice one. Right, let's crack on. This is My Own Garms with Jake Hanrahan. Jake, nice one for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to meet you in real life as well.
Yeah. Like I said, it's like I thought we had met, and then you're like, oh no, we haven't. Yeah.
Just over WhatsApp over the past few years, but it probably didn't used to be a thing where you'd work with someone for such a long time and then never meet them.
COVID messed everything up, didn't it?
It did. Yeah. I know all about Popular Front and what it does, but for the people that have not heard of it, I mean, there can't be many of them left now if you've 4,500, 100,000 followers on Instagram. But for those people that don't
see us,
yeah, those people who don't know, tell us a little bit about what it is you do.
Yeah, so I'm reporter, producer, filmmaker, whatever. Basically, my remit has always been like war, conflict, underground activity, you know, crime, that kind of thing. And so we started Popular Front solely as like war reporting platform, grassroots, no money from anywhere. Started it 5 years ago, and it's gone from like absolutely nothing to like it's on fire now, which is great. But yeah, I guess we cover war and conflict from a little bit of a different perspective, more of an alternative perspective, you could say. But generally, we're interested in what the people on the ground have got to say, and we kind of represent it from their perspective. We're not really interested in, well, this analyst said this expert said that, whatever. Like, that's fine for everybody else, whatever. I'm not saying you don't need that, but we're the people that are very focused on, well, we're here on the ground, and this is what the people there are saying. You know, before this, I worked for Vice News and various other places, and I noticed that, you know, there's nothing like actually being there or hearing from someone that's actually there, because it's always so different. Do you know what I mean? You'll hear something, and you get there and you're like, right, that is just not that way. So yeah, we focus on underreported conflict quite a lot, you know, wars that don't get as much attention in the media. We do documentaries, podcasts, magazine, merch, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, the mag's sick, man. Big
thanks.
Big up for the My Own Garms ad freebie.
Yeah, no, of course, man. Yeah, you have to do us like a new one for the next issue as well.
Yeah, defo, dude. So it can seem a little bit frivolous. We mentioned this in the bonus section, to talk about clothes when people are actually putting their lives on the line. But, you know, you are interested in the culture that these kind of things grow out of, and I think, you know, it's a holistic thing. They all kind of intertwine and stuff like that. So, you know, you said to me when I first put this to you that I am a little fashion boy on the sly.
Yeah. Not even on the slide.
Yeah, man. So I'm buzzing to get your kind of insight on all that stuff today. But tell us a little bit about let me rep, actually. So I've just copped the Popular Front X. Who's the artist that you've collaborated with on this?
He goes by Beers on the Corner Tattoo on Instagram. Top lad, Alex Johnson, and he did one of my tattoos. And we're both of us really interested in like English revolutionary stuff. So you don't hear about it in school, but you know, whilst England was out there wrecking the world, obviously your average man and woman was in a horrible situation. It weren't the peasants doing it. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, me and him we got talking, and I've always been interested in, there was a group called the Levelers, in a kind of, a lot of them were from around where I'm from, actually, in the 1600s, and they basically were like anti-monarchy English people, and they were like in solidarity with Ireland as well. They're like, why are you over there nicking everything? And killing everybody. And that's a modern version of like their designs. So they would, obviously there was no photos back then, and you would get these like woodcut carvings about them. And so me and him were chatting about the Levelers, and I was like, well, why don't we do like a modern version? So it's like, you know, your average person fighting the cops, but in the style of the Leveler woodcut. And I just thought that was a cool thing to do, do you know what I mean? Man. And I think it's it's a really lost bit of history that we have in England, because you don't build anything good from shame. And it's like, well, there was actually people doing really good stuff back then. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, why don't we look at the good side of, you know, trying to have something a bit better? They would give, you know, they would steal land from the monarchy and just grow crops on it and give it to the poor people. And, you know, it was a really cool movement. Got wrecked by Oliver Cromwell, that dickhead. But yeah, it was a really interesting bit of history, and we were like, yeah, that's our kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Man.
Yeah.
The merch is always dope, man. You collaborate with incredible artists, and I love what you do. And one of the ways that you can support it financially is copying a tee, man. Like, I got the Jewel Thief one ages ago.
Oh, I love that Pink Panther on it.
The Pink Panther one. Yeah. And
that's an ode to, you know, the Pink Panther gang. They're like the best diamond thieves in Europe.
Yeah,
that's why it's called that, yeah. And loads of people are like, in Germany, the Pink Panther represents this like horrible neo-Nazi group. I was like, whoa. I was like, it's nothing to do with that. But it was like, all right, Germany don't buy it, everywhere else is fine, you know what I mean?
But I mean, it's great. You've got a Patreon that people support on. That's what keeps you doing what you do without having the kind of input or strings pulled by anyone that's funding it. But the merch seems like a really direct to customer way, and people get to rep what they love, you know. I'd love it if someone asked me about Popular Front when I'm wearing that t-shirt.
Mate, you see it everywhere now as well. I was at the Pro-Palestine march on Saturday, and I see this lad coming by in our t-shirt, and I went up to him, I was like, oh, nice t-shirt. He's like, yo, like, what's happening? And I was like, I buzz off that. I was in like London a couple months back waiting for a mate as well, and I just see someone flying down the road on a bike with that t-shirt on, and I buzz off that, because like our merch isn't like, oh, just do a Teespring and put our logo on everything from like condoms to mugs. It's like thought out. We look up artists, we reach out to artists, and I like always do a collaboration with them. Like sometimes, often I'll be like, I've got this idea, find the right artist for it, like, what do you reckon? We work together, and it was sometimes like our lads, Spice Bag, Adam Doyle, he does a lot of our graphics.
Yeah.
He'll just be like, here's this, and you're like, yeah, perfect, amazing. Do you know what I mean? So it's a big mix of all different people, and it's one of our lads, Hamza, who works with us. He was on this Discord the other day. I think it was Ben Ditto's Discord, and he said there were people like talking about the merch that they were like, oh no, we don't really watch the docs. And I was like, what? So it was like almost just like they like the t-shirts. I was like, well, that's all right. Like, that's up to them. Do you know what I mean? But they were like, oh, we don't really watch it, but yeah, we love the t-shirts. So I was like, well, that's a good sign, isn't it? You're not just making something that's to do with you. You're making it that people like anyway. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, yeah, like we don't take any corporate investment from anywhere. We don't even take sponsors from companies that we feel are, you know, not good. You know, like Philip Morris, the person that basically, the company that gave the world cancer, basically, like the cigarette people, they tried to sponsor us, and, you know, very early on with the Juul. And we were just like, nah, like we don't want that. We want it to be proper. You know what I mean? Like if we believe in something, then it's got to reflect it in many ways. And obviously that's a hard way to make money and keep going. But, you know, like I said, the Patreon, we do all this extra content there. And the t-shirts, mate. We've been making documentaries like from selling t-shirts, which is great.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of a better way to do it. Do you know what I mean? And because all our docs that go on YouTube immediately demonetized, they won't let us make any money off of it. You know, millions of views and can't make a penny off it. So like, all right, well, we can make it from the t-shirts and from the Patreon. So it's been a really unusual but really good way of doing it, and it helps spread it. A few famous people bought the t-shirts, and someone sends you it.
Yeah, man. Who was the monster one with is it Ariana Grande or something like that?
We did some fake ones at the start, which was really funny. So the point was, so we did some fake ones just as like a laugh. We always do, like, you know, we always say we do serious work, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. Yeah. I can't remember what we put it on, but we put it on some like fake celebrity, and then the t-shirt sales went through the roof.
Nuts.
And I was like, come on. and then obviously we were like, it was fake, and people were like, I only bought it because I saw that. I was like, well, that's the point. You've clowned yourself. But then real celebrities started wearing it. ASAP Rocky, we did a fake ASAP Rocky one. We even made it look like it was on TMZ and stuff. It was like,
you know, if you want something to blow, stick it.
Yeah, it was like war journalist t-shirt seen on ASAP Rocky. But then people actually started to wear it. And then the joke was like, we don't know which one's real, which one's not. So I like that. And I was like, you know what I mean? It's pretty obvious.
Hacker mentality, man.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? I was like, we're all kind of from a similar kind of like background to that kind of, back in the day when I first got into media, there was a lot more of that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like being a bit cheeky, messing about. And yeah, so we've always just like embodied that sort of stuff. But then you do see like the lad from Fall Out Boy, He's a really nice guy. He like actually like hit us up and was like, I love what you're doing. The drummer, and he was wearing it at like a concert, and I was like, that's fucking mental. Like that's, you know, my sister I think liked Fall Out Boy back in the day, and I was like, that's really cool. Do you know what I mean? So that does make you feel good. Yeah, it's just I think why do they want to wear what we've done? But now it's like, yeah, of course we put all this effort into it. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Popularfront.com/merch.
No, it should be that.
All right.
But we have about 50 URLs, but it's popularfront.shop. So you get the merch, yeah.
Go on, Carp.
Rep your ends.
So you are from Northampton, right?
I'm from the 110's, but I'm from Kettering.
Okay.
Yeah, so like, I mean, think of it, if you're looking in terms of like London, it would just be the same place. But like, because we're obviously a lot smaller, it's like Northampton is the main city, and then it's the borough, so the 110's, and then we live within the borough in different towns.
Yeah, man. So you told us a little bit about it in the bonus section, but tell us a little bit about that place and what you were seeing people wearing when you were a young lad growing up there.
It's changed a lot over the last like 20 years, and it really started off with, you know, like I was saying, it's I hate it, but it's synonymous with that chavvy kind of term, you know,
right.
Like people, I've heard people call me that. Fine, but I think that's a horrible thing to say. It's like a snobby thing. Do you know what I mean?
When did that term come in for you? Because in Chorley, no, I don't know if people
Townie
say it now. It was Townie, man. Everyone
yeah,
said
it used to be Townie, yeah.
And then chav seemed particularly venomous and
it
particularly
is.
Media created. Like
it is. It's a way to be like, oh, you're like just this little rat, basically, and it's like it's a very horrible thing. But I don't like it. But maybe I'm being sensitive. I don't know. But yeah, so it was like very much that kind of style. And I remember in school when you were about, I don't know, like 14. You're really starting to like. I was into skating, but didn't have the money for it, to be honest with you. Like we didn't have money. You know, my mum would buy me like one pair of trainers. It's like that's got to last you 3 years, boy. Do you know what I mean?
Skateboarding's going to fuck them up.
And it exactly would ruin them all the time. You know what I mean? So we used to like put wax on the shoe. You look mental, but it's to stop ripping holes in it, and it didn't really work. We had like shoe glue all the time. But then as you get a bit older,
like the Margellas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was an innovator, mate. But you know, as it got older, it was just more into like. I remember Aquascutum. I think we had a factory where we're from.
Okay,
I do remember, and there was like older years. I would see lads wearing like Aquascutum and is it like Henleys or something like that? You know, and they were wearing all these like kind of football casual stuff, and then like Football Factory come out.
Okay.
So then all of them lads, our school was like a split. It was like more like grime street style and like casual. And I remember at one point being like, which do I want to do? Like, because you know, you're a kid, you don't know who you are. And it was always just a mix of both, really. Do you know what I mean? And it was a lot cheaper because you could go and get like, I'll be honest, like I remember lads would nick academics tracksuits from TK Maxx.
TK Maxx,
and it's like if you're nicking from TK Maxx, it's got to be bad. Do you know what I mean? But so we did that.
Kettering had a TK Maxx, did it?
It did it when we hit about 16. And then we were like in there, do you know what I mean? For the first 3 weeks, there's loads of good stuff, and then it went downhill. So it was a mix of that. And then I remember going like, I went to college for a little bit in Northampton, you know, bigger town, bigger place, better sense of style. And that's when like I said, we're seeing with 110's, 95s. And I was like, oh, mate, like, I love them. But the idea of spending 110 quid on a pair of trainers was madness. I remember we used to get like, we used to buy fake, Air Max 90s was like our area. We'd always be in 90s or whatever. Do you know what is big in our area now? You know when you get like, they'll bring out 50 different colours of Air Max 90s, and there'll always be like the really off-key ones where they're like green and blue and red. Like, and they'll get reduced to like 30 quid at the end of the season. You'll see a lot of them about, do you know what I mean? So when I started going to like seeing like really cool 110's and that, I was like, oh man, like I really, really want them and that. But still, that weren't really happening. So we would get like fake Nikes, and it actually become kind of cool because I remember you would get colorways that just didn't exist apart from the fakes. And they were pretty good fakes, do you know what I mean? You get like 2 pairs for like 50 or whatever, 2 pairs of fake Air Max 90s. And back then, the culture was different then. There weren't this thing of like, oh, you've got fake, you're a scallywag, like whatever. It was just like, you're almost proud of it, like, yeah, fuck it, I don't give a shit, we ain't got no money, like, yeah, we're wearing fakes. And it weren't, if someone would be like, oh, you got a fake on, you'd be like, fuck off, you snob. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just think, nah. Now it's different, even where I'm from, like it's suit, like you see lads with like Gucci, but as soon as flannels opened, it was over. Do you know what I mean? People are getting in credit card debt to wear like Balenciagas, like it's mad. But we didn't have that back then, and we was like a, you know, very much I remember 2 for 20 Nike t-shirts from JD, kitted out every summer, like, you know, 40 quid, you got 4 new t-shirts on rotation. You know, we were really into like grime music and stuff like that, and we'd see like the London scenes. And I remember like I bought like a fake Averex jumper off of eBay. Okay. And I remember I wore it and it was too small, but I was like, I'm still wearing it. And, you know, people are like, what the fuck are you doing with that? So I was trying to do different bits, but I was never that. I wanted to have different bits, but you were like kind of hemmed in because of how expensive everything was. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But definitely, like, I think our area specifically was a real mix of the casual versus the more streetwear stuff. And I wouldn't say it's unique to our area, because I see it a lot in Manchester actually as well. But you definitely see the influence of like the more old school culture of like country type versus the more city kind of feeling of culture merging together. Yeah. And yeah, man, it was just like, I used to really enjoy looking at stuff and like taking it. I don't know, I was quite more aware of it, I think, than my pals were. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And yeah, man, it was like, it was just always there. And also because I would go to the Thai boxing, you know, always going there. It was like home, basically, all my like real close pals. You would see all different things there, because you then had this mix of like, now it's really popular, but back then you would have a mix of like, you know, you'd be out in your trackies and your, you know, your Air Max 90s, but you'd have like an Everlast hoodie on because that was your boxing gear or whatever, do you know what I mean? And you'd wear gym stuff outside the gym, and now that's very normal, but back then it was quite unusual. And you'd kind of see our lads. I remember thinking that was the coolest thing. I remember walking up to the Thai boxing one day, my mate had his Thai boxing shorts on in the street with his, like, I think he had 110's, which again was rare, there might have been 90s, and he had like a vest on in his bag, and I was like, oh, that looks so cool, do you know what I mean? Man. And he's just turning up to thing, and I'm just being a little ponce like, oh. Yeah. But I do remember thinking like, that's really cool, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we were chatting about the Thai boxing short and its aesthetic beauty the other day. I remember watching Kickboxer with Jean-Claude Van Damme and Bloodsport, which is the one where he fights Tong Po, that fucking bald-headed chap with a plait out the back of it.
No idea, man. I've only seen like Ong Bak.
It's one of them Van Damme films, but he had Thai boxing shorts on and the ties around his arm. And I remember thinking it was the definition of virile masculinity. I just thought it looked sick. And then years down the line, I sent you a picture the other day when you had your Muay Thai shorts on of Pharrell in his human-made ones. And they looked old, man. The lettering, the colours, really cool. Like, fucking cool. Really
cool. The tassels as well, like, there's so much history behind it all. Like, the tassels, when Thai boxing kind of was, you know, invented, I guess, it was like an actual fighting sport for soldiers. Okay. Because they didn't have the guns in that then, so they have like, you know, the idea was if you lose whatever, your sword or whatever, you'd have like these metal things on, you'd be able to fight anyway. And they would tie like bits of their mother's fabric to their arm as like a good luck
tokens
thing.
Of war.
Whilst going to war. So now to this day they keep it going and stuff like that. Not their mother's stuff, but you know, it's like symbolic of that. Yeah. And I do love the whole culture around Thai boxing. It's like very, very tough, but it's not a macho thing. It's like very different specifically. Like, I'm not really into MMA. I don't really like that. I like boxing. I did that for years, but something about the Thai boxing, I just find it very different culturally, and it's just so much more movement. It's very hard as well, and it forms really good communities actually, because it's like I say, it's not a tough guy thing. You know, the best Muay Thai boxers in the world,
humble dudes,
humble guys, mate. You'll never hear them trash talking and that. Unfortunately, now certain agencies are trying to bring that in and make it a bit more Western, but it's just a really cool thing. And through that, you get these like really unique things, like the culture of the very bright shorts, and it's like one of my mates, Luke DeBurr, he's fighting next month actually, and he said to us one time, he's like, oh, I've got about 40 pairs in my car, and we're like, mate, like, do you know how much money that is? Like, and he's just like, he's addicted to buying you know, like the new thing, and it becomes a whole thing, you know what I mean? It's really cool, I think.
All consuming.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So some of the first people I remember thinking looked cool in clothes were computer game characters. I talked about Tong Po back then actually, so it looks like I've got a type when I'm talking about my fashion inspo. But Ryu on Street Fighter 2, you're a few years younger than me, so we probably had different consoles of choice when we were little. But Ryu on Street Fighter 2, I remember looking at him and he had this like frayed, edged karate top on with like ripped trousers and a bandana around
Yeah,
his
the
head.
red bandana, wasn't it? Yeah,
You look sick, man. You look so good. And as a 6-7-year-old, that's what I would have wanted to not go out and wear around the streets, but that's what I noticed. These
You would have. If your mum had let you, you'd be doing it.
At 6, I probably would, yeah.
Yeah.
Any older than that. But I know with Popular Front, there's a lot of Metal Gear Solid Easter eggs in there.
Yeah.
I was mixing something for you the other day and there was a mad sound effect in it. I was like, what the fuck's happening in there? Is that a mistake? And I got onto you, it was like, yeah, that's a Metal Gear Solid thing.
It's the Metal Gear Solid alert sound, yeah.
But did you ever look to computer games for like aesthetic inspo?
Definitely, more so though with our like design, I would say.
Yeah.
But no, definitely, I think like computer games are one of the most like best art forms, if you know what I mean. You can do everything. It's like a film. You can play it. You know, it's just so many things in one. I think it's amazing, especially them like early like low poly count. I still love all that old school creepy. It can be creepy, you know, like Silent Hill 2. Like you look at that and you can't beat it. No matter how good graphics get, it's a feeling. Do you know what I mean? The feeling that conveys is way better with the limitations for me than the new graphics and that. But no, I mean, there was, for me, a lot when I was a kid was like cartoons. And I remember seeing, similar to what you were saying, I remember watching Biker Mice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Vinny was like the bad one. And he had like bandoliers, so like bullets across. And I remember thinking like, I literally remember thinking like, I want to dress like that one day. Like obviously it would be mental, but when you're a kid, you've got to know, you're just like, he's wicked. Do you know what I mean?
That was really cyberpunky.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. It was. Yeah,
it looked nuts. The music was punky.
The music was like really. It was like like soft drum and bass, like like liquid punk style. It was really like unusual. Yeah, and I remember watching it. And I was just like, wow, this is incredible. And that whole style, they lived in like a secret hideout. I know it sounds meant like Biker Mice from Mars, but I do remember seeing that and thinking like, that's really cool. And to this day, that's, okay, it's not Biker Mice, but like whatever that is, you see it in a lot of things.
Yeah.
Still, we do like to mix different genres. I think that's a cool thing to do. I just think that's the way forward a lot of the time because you end up with something different. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a difference between copying something and being inspired by it. I think like a lot of this like 90s stuff or early 2000s stuff, it's really cool, but I think sometimes people copy it to the point where it's like it's just like it does. I think you have to do something else with it. Do you know what I mean? Like the Neo version of whatever that is. Yeah. Not that I particularly know how to do it, but I would like to. Do you know what I mean?
It's interesting that they fetishize that period and think that it was all, you know, cool clothes and good art and stuff like that, and it was actually like, it was pretty shit.
There's a lot of shit. I think there was a lot of wicked stuff, but like we cherry pick that now.
Yeah.
If you look, mate, when I was that age, like I wanted basically, so if you're talking like early 2000s, I would have been like 10, 11, and by about 11, 12, I wanted to be Eminem. Like that was it. And I remember like I went to a fancy dress party as Eminem because like I think my mum had bought me the album, not really realising what was on it. Yeah. And I went to a fancy dress party. I remember I still had the like dog tags. And like I would like sometimes wear the dog tags.
Yeah, man.
And it was like I remember my mum like before looking at me just like, what are you doing sort of thing. And I was like, no, it's cool.
What era of Eminem did you go as? Dungarees?
No, it was Real Slim Shady.
Okay, so blue baggy jeans, big white
top. I remember my hair was white though, because my mum was like, she got the spray, not the dye.
Yeah.
And she was like, yellow was too like, it was like neon.
Yeah.
So you got to have white. So I just looked like an old man. And I remember she spraying my hair. And I remember brushing it out. She's like, what are you doing? Spray and putting it. Oh, I look mental, mate. Absolutely mental.
I think I had a few Eminem inspired No Fear visors.
Oh, God.
Which were a bit of
that is it's a real rotter, that is the visor. The only person who can pull it off is like DEE. You know what I mean? Like the Kangol one. But no.
So with the conflict journalism, you've been about a bit, you've been all over the world. Are there any common clothing threads that run through the various groups that you've covered that maybe aren't geographically linked, but you see, you know, something that's common throughout them all?
Yeah, definitely, and I think as well, like just to go back to what you said earlier, like sometimes like you were saying, oh, it might seem frivolous to focus on that, but it's not really, because we're not focusing on being like, oh, forget the war, like let's look at it's like that is a part of understanding the group, the fashion that they've used, why they're wearing that, why they've got this, and I'll give you an example of that. It's maybe not necessarily fashion, but it's an interesting thing. So when I was about 25, I was filming with a Kurdish rebel group in Turkey, because Kurds are not treated very well there at all. They would all keep a pair of, and these were like ghetto kids, like they were rising up in their areas. They're like, you know, they'd got guns and that, and you're talking like 18, 19-year-olds, even younger as well, from like this kind of hood, like very deprived areas in Turkey. You know, like people go Bodrum, they think it's great. Southeast Turkey is very similar to like Syria, basically. Okay. And, you know, I think you're like 4 times more likely to not have employment there than the rest of the country, and it's the Kurdish areas. Anyway, so these kids are rising up, you know, various kids have been shot in the street by Turkish security forces. And they were rioting at the start, like before the guns really came out. And they all had an extra pair of socks in their pockets. I said to one of them, I said, why you got a sock? You all got socks. He said, because we have balaclavas, right? But one of them must have got captured, and he realised that the filming, they were looking at the shoes they all had. So they were like, if we get caught with our trainers, we can't ever wear them again. So what we do is when we go for the clash, we take off the socks, put it over our trainers.
Nuts, man.
Yeah, so when they catch us, they can't look to it because they've all got like, and they all had these mad, like they're running about with these like socks on the shoes. And I was like, that is fascinating. Like that is super interesting. What you do notice is a kind of, not always, but like a certain style will fit a certain group. For example, in Brazil, I've not been there, it's something we're trying to do right now, but in Brazil, there's 2 very like hardcore favela, like militias, gangs, whatever. And one group only wear Nike trainers and one group only wear Adidas. And so if they might see like, right, Adidas is one of them. Do you know what I mean? Like that's super interesting, stuff like that.
It is nuts. They've co-opted these massive Western brands to mean something completely removed.
Yeah, it's exactly like, it's like that Nike. But it's the same as like something else that really super interests me is like, I remember one of the hooligan lads from Ukraine was telling me, he said back in the day, like, you know, they were over there, Ukraine, like punk scene was very involved with violence because of, they have like, you know, you got fascist punks and anti-fascist punks, and the anti-fascist punks are as fucking tough as the fascist ones over there. Do you know what I mean? If not tougher to a degree. And so, you know, the punk scene was very involved in violence. And one lad was telling me, if we saw like back in the day when they were young, we saw a lad on the bus and he had like, you know, the certain kind of piercing, and be like, he's not a punk though. He doesn't come to the shows. He doesn't fight for the right to be like a left punk or whatever. They'd have him be like, right, earrings out. And he's like, what? And they're like, earrings out, you're going to get battered. So they just collect like fake punks and stuff like that. And I have heard stories of that back in the day. People would take like Stone Island patches off of lads if they weren't really hooligans. Now everyone and their mum wears Stone Island, do you know what I mean? Me. But yeah, so stuff like that is everywhere you kind of go. And you do see that, like, for example, for a while, New Balance was like represented in fascist groups in Europe, which was really weird. But I think it was the New Balance, right? These scumbags, their idea of balance is just being a horrible Nazi, whatever. But you do get it on the other side as well. You'll just get like, so the PKK is a really interesting group, the Kurdish rebel group. They have these special shoes called kneecaps, and they're like these weird, like brown, leathery shoes. And they've almost become like this fashion thing, because they wear them with these like traditional Kurdish trousers, were super baggy but then gathered at the bottom. And then they have these kneecaps, but the kneecaps are very good for running up the mountains, which I've seen them do. Like they're like gazelles. It's insane. And they do certain things to them, like they'll melt the bottom to help the grip, and like all little things like that it starts off as a practical thing, becomes almost a fashion thing. Do you know what I mean? And there's actually a pair of Nikes, I forget which one it is. There's no way the designer didn't see the kneecaps. It's like loads of my Kurdish friends were sending me, they're like, have you seen it? Nike could do a kneecap now. And I was like, no way. And yeah, it was like super interesting. So you always see these things blend in, but when you're talking war, it represents something else. Do you know what I mean? Like it represents, this brand represents our group because of something that happened somewhere or whatever, and I think that's really interesting. And then you get other groups, like a good friend of mine from one of these hooligan lads in Ukraine. They have their own clothing brand called Haters Gonna Hate, and the idea was, when they were the hooligans, they were the only anti-fascist ones. So you're talking the whole of Ukraine is their enemy. Because of that, they had a very tight-knit group and were very good at fighting. And, you know, Nazi groups would be very upset that they got beaten up by like left-wing hooligans. So they were like, right, you can hate, but you can't beat us, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? So it was like kind of, they incorporated, I think, that into their thing. And they would say like, we love hate, as in like you might hate us, but we will fuck you up as well. Like we're not soft, sort of thing. So that is like a really cool brand, which I think is just okay, the designs look wicked, but there's like a legacy behind it already. Do you know what I mean? It's so cool. And now we did a collab with them, with Popular Front, and the design was a TN. I know, a friend of ours that works with us, Laura, she made a design where a TN was like kicking a swastika apart for an anti-fascist group we know in Australia. But then we said, well, them lot have already done that, but now they're fighting Russia, so the sign for the Russian forces was the Z. So we had it like the swastika's broken, it's done, they got rid of that. Well, not got rid of it, you know what I mean? That's the old fight, and now it's kicking a Z apart. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, and then we gave them all the money, and then it helped them buy like safety equipment and stuff like that. So I think of something like that, when the war is done, they're going to carry it on, and it's like, yeah, what a legacy, what a like beginning for a brand. You know what I mean? So it's like, I know now with the kind of advent of like globalization and the internet and whatever, it's not always a bad thing, because there are a lot of people in all different places like this. There's a group, actually I'm wearing these socks now, this is by Ara the Rat. He's like an Armenian fashion designer, and all of his clothes are inspired by like, you know, Armenian struggles, Armenian culture. A lot of the money goes to, you know, displaced Armenians right now, and it's just like, there's a lot of that going on. But it used to be, it would be kind of like a bit shit, but now it's like, it's not his, I mean like in general that thing, but now it's like really cool designs, and they're better than actual, like it's better than seeing something from some like already known brand, because it's like, this comes from a real place. Do you know what I'm saying? And if fashion people really want to have authenticity, they'll start finding people for real, and they are starting to actually. I have a friend as well, I mean, and she's like this incredible like bag designer in Armenia, and because she's all over there, it's very difficult for people to see what she's doing and stuff like that. But you know, when you just know someone will pick it up and it will go. Do you know what I mean? And it's there's so much cool independent stuff happening in these places that are only synonymous with war, and that's the real tragedy, because it's like, because of that, these people can't thrive in the way they want to thrive. But at the same time, you know, it's, I don't know, there's some kind of balance through chaos, I guess, because it inspires this and this and this. It's really interesting, you know. People see these people, unfortunately, sometimes like, that's the militant, and it's like, no, they're a militant right now because they've got to defend their land or whatever, but they were a person before that, and they're a person after that, and they're a person now, and they've got all other interests, you know. So yeah, I think we've done really well with kind of like keying into that, because we're not just interested in that, we're interested in who is it, these people behind this, you know, what were you before you had to pick up the gun, you know. And yeah, you know, fashion, everybody loves it, do you know what I mean?
Everyone wears clothes.
Everyone wears clothes, mate.
All these big brands are desperate to tell stories, desperate to be authentic, and paying creative houses, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to get something with that depth of story. And then you get these people actually doing it with an interesting story authentically. So,
well, these big places have got to get some balls and stop being thieves, because they see that, they'll go like, right, we'll just steal it, or it's too edgy. It's like, you're meant to be the fashion world. You know, like, go for it, you know. Like, I had a meeting recently where there's a very big, I wasn't with the brand, but someone I know was working for a very big, like, high fashion brand. And, like, long story short, they were trying to work out how to do this, like, advert for whatever, and they wanted it to be super edgy. And I know this bare knuckle boxing couple. They were married, husband and wife, really lovely people, and they are involved in bare knuckle boxing, you know, and the wife is and the husband is. And the idea was like this kind of harmony through chaos or whatever. I was like, literally, let's get them. Do you know what I mean? Give them some money, get them to promote this. Obviously, they're never going to go for it. It's too scary for them. They'll probably do like a fake version where it's, you know, it's not real or whatever. And I think that's a real shame. Like, that's one reason I love, you know, like haute couture. Like, I love all that. I think it's amazing, because it's one of the last places where
pure art,
mate. And it's like, well, obviously when I was a kid, I was like, this is stupid. When you realise you're not meant to wear that out, it's like an art thing. And it's also one of these like cultures where it's like viper territory, kind of horrible, very on edge, but they're also like, yeah, fuck it, so what? And there's something in a world where everything has to be soft and all the edges have to be smoothed off. There's something to be said for people going, we're going to stay horrible. Do you know what I mean? And I do, but at the same time, make like super interesting stuff, and I think that's quite cool.
Pushing things forward.
I love it, mate. I read like Vogue and all sorts of stuff.
Mate. Get Condé.
Can't you tell?
Get Condé Nast to put out the next Popular Front magazine.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I know that you are interested in subcultures in your work. Are there any subcultures? You mentioned skating and boxing to an extent. And are there any subcultures that you've been involved with personally in terms of clothes and thought, looking back on it, that's not me, man?
I mean, I don't really get embarrassed like that. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like the idea of a guilty pleasure, I don't even get the concept of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I hate people that feel that they have to hide a certain side of themselves. So I would say, I mean, there's definitely been things where I've seen a picture, I'm like, what were you wearing?
Yeah.
But it wasn't necessarily that I was trying to be something. It was just like, I had no idea what I was doing. Do you know what I mean?
Which of these eras, apart from the Eminem outfit, which you look back on?
That was bad. I remember one time I turned up at, I was working at Vice at the time, and I had these like really bright, that was a bad time. I was really into like quite colourful trainers, but then wearing them with like quite formal like jeans, like collared shirt and jumper, which can look good, but I just couldn't, I don't know what I was doing. And I remember I was working at Vice, I had these Asics like gel light, but they were like black and like lime green. And these were one of these like bargain because no one wanted them, but I was like, oh, they were all right. I remember I was wearing them, and you know when you're like, you think they're good, but then you see your mates and you're like, oh no, what have I done? And I was like, oh no, they're all right. And I sat in the office with my friend at house, and I was like, what do you think of these trainers, Alice? She was like, they're fucking horrible. And I was like, they are, aren't they? And she was like, why are you wearing them? And I was like, fuck no. You know when you're just like, oh my God, what have I done here? And so they were pretty bad, like bright, too much neon on the trainers was too much.
Do you think this era where you were trying to dress maybe more conservatively on the top, but still retain a little bit of colour and street style flair, is this when you first started working in the city, you first moved to London, you were maybe moving with slightly different crowds? And also, like, you know, I was a reporter, and I was obviously a little bit different maybe to the way that some reporters were at that time, and I got very like self-conscious. I remember there was this horrible, I mean, you know, I was super like, I didn't go to school or anything like that really, you know, like I've never studied journalism or anything, I don't have any qualifications, so I was like just new to all this, you know, big city and that. And I remember one lad was like basically like making fun of my accent and stuff like this. So I got like super paranoid, and I thought, well, if I don't like act a bit more, like, to be honest, I was thinking just be like, try and talk posh. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, not that I have like much of an accent, but I was like really on camera, like really trying to like enunciate my T's, you know, and it's just never, I've never been like that. So I had to like really try. And then I think part of that as well was like, right, I'm going to stop wearing Nikes. I used to always wear these like Reebok workouts, which I like. I used to wear them to school, but they're very like just black, whatever. So definitely I tried to like think, what should that kind of person wear and whatever. And I think for a little while I was like that, but then eventually I was just like, fuck this, and then just do my own thing. And it's not like I wear anything particularly flamboyant anyway. So I was like, what am I even doing this? Do you know what I mean? So it was, very quickly I was like, fuck that. And just, it was fine. And then I started being myself more. And it was like, people preferred it. Because obviously, because people don't want you to be like everyone else. They don't.
But I was very like, I didn't want to be I didn't want to be that like yobbo, like, he's this weird. I just wanted to be a reporter and noticed for my work, not like, oh, he's this like, you know, fucking hooligan or whatever. And I certainly was like, there was a lot of social norms that were very different in London that, you know, like the idea of being cringe didn't really exist where I'm from. Do you know what I mean? It was like, you just do your thing and you'd be like, look at fucking twat, like, and you just laugh about it. And it's really, actually really nice to be like, oh, look, you know, auntie's dancing like a lunatic and whatever. And, you know, I didn't, you know, didn't really ever understand that too cool for school concept until I started. Imagine you go from Kettering to Shoreditch. Do you know what I mean? It was like a real culture shock. And I remember people just being like, he's a fucking like weirdo. Like, he's not a weirdo, but he's just like mental. And I wasn't. And I was like kind of like quiet, I thought. But you realise there's all these different social norms, and I kind of went into my shell a bit and then came out again and was like, oh, I actually don't give a fuck. And then, do you know what I mean? I found a good group of people, but it was a weird one. Yeah, man. I think that ethos really shines through in Popular Front as well. I think there's like a tagline that you use that's like, not invited, don't care. Not bothered. Not invited,
yeah,
not
that's
bothered.
it, man. And
yeah,
like,
we use that in one of our videos,
invite all the different freaks and weirdos, whatever.
We've always
colour,
said that. We're not for the cool kids. That's cool kids are not cool. They're staring in the mirror too much. Do you know what I mean? We're like, we want it, and we have done, like, we've had people, so many reach out and be like, before I found Popular Front, I didn't think I would be the sort of person to do this. We had some girl reach out to us as well. She's like this trans goth girl that's like obsessed with like vampire anime, and happens to be this incredible like research when it comes to like OSINT war stuff. And she was like, I kind of like used to hide to her, and there's a report front. I was like, if you're into vampire anime, I don't care. If you're trans, it's fine, no problem with us. Do you know what I mean? Are you good? Yeah, cool. And that's it. So, and we not only that, but we were like, firstly, we're not bothered about all that, but we kind of like that you to be yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like it makes for more interesting things. You actually see things that I'll look at it this way, but then my mate will sit from the other way because he's into something else, and I'll be like, oh fucking hell, I would have never even thought or clocked that. And it's better, you know, if you want to make everything uniform, it's boring, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so through that, we've always said like we're like the first ever thing we used to say it's warfare for weirdos was like a joke we used to say about. But yeah, I had a very, very good friend. We don't speak now, unfortunately, but I remember she one time said to me, she was like, you're a weirdo. And I was like, oh, what? And she was like, no, it's good. It's great. And I was like, yeah, it can be good to be a weirdo. Do you know what I mean?
Lean into it.
Yeah, lean into it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I even at school, I was kind of like that. I remember I was like in a certain group, but I would chat to like what we call like the Grebs and the Goths. And, you know, I chat to them, they'd be like, oh, aren't you with them? I was like, yeah, so what? Like, do you know what I mean? I've got on with everybody or tried to.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing to do. And I do think now the younger generation, it's a no-brainer to them. But from what I've seen, they're not into their cliques so much. Maybe, but really in England, I think there's a really cool thing where all different groups kind of, you know, inspire each other.
I was listening to that Popular Front episode a while back about the French anti-fascist movement, and your man on there was talking about a big clash between a far-right group and an anti-fascist group during a sale at a Parisian Fred Perry shop.
And, yeah, it's so French, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's nuts. I mean, we touched on it with your Fred Perry in the bonus section, but it's nuts when these groups gather around brands. These subcultures gather around brands. There's not that much of it left now. This kind of solid subculture thing. Yeah. But yeah, what's your take on that? Maybe about the subcultures and specifically around brands.
I wish we still had it in a way. Like as much as I've just said, oh, we don't all need to be in one thing. I think those subcultures, I'm really interested in the sharps. Like, and if you look back at that, the skinheads against racial prejudice. If you look back at that, it was very like similar styles, but it was very like everyone had their own little flair to it, and there was all different, just different communities doing it. Do you know what I mean? I have this book. I gave it to a friend of mine actually. Left-wing skinhead hooligan in Germany, a lovely lad, and I gave him the book. But in it, there was these, there's like this whole bit with the black skinheads. Do you know what I mean? And they'd kind of brought their own little flares into it from there, like, you know, their family were from Jamaica, wherever, they'd brought their flair into it. And then that's how, like, you know, if you look at like two-tone and all that sort of stuff. And I think I love when you mix two different things, and then it becomes, that is a mix of two different cultures from different places that became an archetypal British thing. That to me is what Britain is.
Should be
to me.
proud of, man.
That is, you know what I mean? I hate this thing of like, oh, I hate Britain. It's trendy, in it, amongst like activists. I love Britain, but I don't love the state, and I certainly don't love the monarchy. But that kind of thing is Britain to me. Like all of us being like, oh, we're all different, we're all from different places, but this one thing, let's put all this together, and then we have this thing. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's beautiful, man. And I do think, unfortunately, through the loss of subcultures, we have lost a bit of that. Do you know what I mean? And I do think everything gets a bit bland, you know what I mean? But I do think those, like, one subculture taken on a style is just so cool. Like, even like if you look at Teddy Boys back in the day, I think that was cool. Mods, I love all that. Like one of my mates' dad, he's like old school mod. He looks wicked, mate, to this day. He's about 50, 60 now, and he rides about on his scooter on a Sundays, and I see him and that, like, just looks brilliant. It's timeless, that. Not with the Paul Weller cut, not that one. He don't have that. I don't think that should have been timed out day one. But otherwise, he looks really cool, and I love all that. And sometimes I went out for a drink with a mate of mine a while ago, and we see like a sharp guy, old school, and he had sharp in his knuckles. I was like, oh, fucking hell, sharp, da da da. And you clocked it when you're looking, he's advanced it, he dresses his age, but you could still see a few little things. I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, man.
But it was sad because it was like, that's the end of it now. It's kind of died. Although in Europe, there are still, there are a lot more on it, but I blame like flannels, mate. Because now, like where I'm from, like every lad just gets a bit of money and their style is like flannels. It's like, I'm sorry, it's terrible. Okay. You know what I mean? It's like, not to say what they sell is terrible, but it's like,
it's together.
It's the way it's put together. Right. It's like the most expensive trainers, but it's just not thought out. It's just like, we're wearing the money, which I do understand. You do that if you're from like a working class background, you might wear your money in a sense, but it was done in a much cooler way back then, I think. Do you know what I mean?
When you had to improvise, when you had to...
Exactly. You couldn't just go everything from flannels.
Yeah. Yeah, the death of the subculture, man. It's global homogeneity, innit?
Yeah, which it's maybe it's not good, maybe it's not bad, whatever, but it is gone. So not completely, in the Western world it is, but other places it's definitely live and well. I had a friend, chatting to a friend of mine, one of the skinheads from Ukraine, the anti-fascist ones. He said he got arrested for fighting, and they sent in like what you call like a duck. So they sent in like a cop who's pretending to be someone else, and the bloke was like, yeah, I'm a Nazi like you, like I got a training camp. And he's like, I'm fucking sharp, you twat. And they were like, oh fuck, and they just like, you know, they just like immediately were like, oh fuck. And I thought that's really funny. He said, yeah, because we looked the same,
yeah,
just we'd had different tattoos. Do you know what I mean? I was like, that's really funny.
Talk to me a little bit about techwear. I remember sharing a meme to you about the Ralph Lauren military shorts a while ago. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
So it's a dude with like a assault rifle on top and like full camo with all the like and then these like real fruity Ralph Lauren tight fitting shorts and like boat loafers.
Yeah.
And it was basically saying how wrong these brands get it when they're talking about military stuff. What's your take on kind of brands borrowing military shape?
That's a great question, man. And I think it's a very fine line between that's a cool idea that you've incorporated into the fashion versus a bit dark. Do you know what I mean? Like I think I went to Massimo night where they like showcased all like CP Company and Stone Island. They went really into the history. I took with my mate Sam Hall went, and it was banging. And it was like when it was broken down and explained, I was like, that's the way to do it. Like I really do. I love that side of it. And it's not only does it look cool, it's durable, but it's not obvious. It's not so obvious. Do you know what I mean? When you start doing it to the point where it's a little bit like, like we've just took this thing from this war. It's firstly, it doesn't look right because, like you were saying, you innovate things from like the ground up, right? So, you know, like I've seen this thing where a lot of the like African militias, particularly in Congo, will, because of their belief system, they have like these amulets that they believe will like help them in war, and like sometimes believe it will mean they won't get hit by bullets, and they look incredible. It's like the coolest thing you've ever seen in your life. But it's, you know, it's a very dark situation because these are often either like horrible militias doing like God knows what, or like kids that have been pushed into it, or people that are having to do it to protect their land, whatever. So they have created their own style, and it's like, that's very, visually it's cool, but it's from a dark place, and it's, okay, it is what it is, whatever. I'm not like moralizing it, but you can't really do anything else with that. You need to leave that for them and leave that alone, because if you then from safety send, oh yeah, let's put that into our thing, I don't think it's a bit, it's just odd. I feel like it's a little, you're touching a little bit too close. But if you're talking like Massimo's, like, oh yeah, here's like this this great material from an old war truck, which is a great coat. Yeah, I think that's cool, man. Do you know what I mean? But then there's other sides of it where people are like wearing Flecktarn, which is like quite synonymous with far right groups now. Okay,
what's that particular style?
It's like a particular old German camo.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, but then I don't know, then maybe then you should just take that and say like, you know, I've got a mate who's black that wears a Flecktarn jacket.
Yeah, yeah.
We were joking about it, and he, you know, he was like, I don't give a fuck, whatever, I like the look of it. And it's like, yeah, maybe then you should say, well, yeah, let's take anything from them. Yeah. But I don't know, I think maybe, I don't deal so much with like military, I'm more with like rebel groups.
Yeah.
So you see a very different range of styles, and, you know, they're obviously, mostly it's like combat trout, not even combat, like mostly like tight jeans, pair of Nikes, and like usually a football t-shirt, and then like a bandolier with like the guns on and then the ammo, and it's like super unusual but really fascinating to see it. Another thing that I've seen now, which I'm going to sound old now, but obviously all lads wear balaclavas now. So I see lads wearing balaclavas now, I can't help myself sometimes. I'm like, take your fucking balaclava off. You fucking what? I just think, right, don't want to be stabbed by a 12-year-old. But you know, you see it, and they're like the other day I was going in Tesco, and there's like 10 lads, like most of them in ballies on. It's like, what are you doing outside Tesco? You're not that guy. You don't need to, you know what I mean? And it's obviously a part of like the drill culture and whatever. But I just think, well, if my grandma's on her mobility scooter and she sees that, she's going to shit herself.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? So there are things that I think, I don't know, I just think like it's gone a bit odd.
You got to think about it, man.
Yeah, but again, I'm 33. I'm not like cool anymore, like in that respect. So maybe I'm just like, and if I was that age, I'd have probably been doing the same thing. Do you know what I mean?
You know Parsalu from Coventry, the rapper?
No.
I think he was from the Gambia, but all of his crew all wear ballies, just eyes out, but all in like nuts colour. So
of course, yeah, he did the Frontline tune, right?
Yeah,
sorry, yeah.
So sick. I went to see him, and he's got like, you know, mad military stuff, but like then flipped in a real high fashion way.
Yeah,
I think he dresses incredible.
I was gonna say he looks wicked. I have seen this. It's like, again, it's how do you do it? But also, I would argue that like his family are from Africa. I think he's originally born there, right?
He's African.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it's like, I would say if he's doing it, he's almost got more of a like way to do it. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's just one of these things. If you get someone who's like, oh yeah, let's just nick that from over there. It's like, I think you can't just do that. I'm not like putting borders up on it, but I do think, yeah, you just have to be a little bit aware of what you're doing. I think where some people do go mad. Do you know what I mean?
For real.
Yeah.
Top 3 selected.
I want to know from you. Mentioned a few today: mods, punks, skins. I want to know from you top 3 best dressed subcultures.
Sharps, definitely.
Yeah.
Straight up Sharps. I think football casuals as well is like really cool. And 3. I gotta say, Kiev street scene, which sounds very like wanky and specific.
Yeah. It's one you've experienced firsthand, so you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like they have a very unique style. It's a mix of, you know, like, what is it? Fucking hell, you showed me it. Gorp core. It's a mix of like that Gorp core and a mix of kind of casual football and a mix of punk, and it's just very unique, and it looks cool as fuck. And it basically, like, as soon as you see it, you know they're a part of that group or part of this, or they're involved. They're involved. I don't mean criminally, they're just about it. You know, over there, you can't really fake being a street scene. It's Ukraine. Do you know what I mean? And there's something really cool about that. So yeah, I would say probably that's top 3, yeah.
Sick, man. I think the Ukraine crew that you just mentioned, like the mixture of those 3 things really tells the story of what they're about. You know, they've got to be functionally equipped if they need to be out and about. They need to be equipped if they need to scrap, if they need to throw down.
They do. They all have like these little bum bags and that. God, CS gas in there and all sorts of stuff. Do you know?
And that recognisability, you know, that communality through recognising is important when, you know, there's that kind of stuff at play. You know, you need to be able to tell who's who.
And it's also like, it's ironic in a way, but it's like not a rehashing, but like an evolved version of like the skinhead culture, because there's a lot of stories from back in the day where 2 groups will see each other and they're like, all right, and then they're like, oh shit, it's the racist ones or it's the anti-fascist. So they think they're on the same side, and then they end up having to scrap by accident because they almost look identical. So yeah, it's similar. Yeah.
Ace, man. Yeah, the casuals. We had Rue Oxley on. I don't know if you follow her. Like,
she's wicked. Yeah.
Clobber really babe, man. But she writes sick, and she came on when we were up in Manchester.
Clobber, isn't it? That new one.
Yeah. They're good, man. In fact, I'll send you a copy because
I really want.
I bought a copy, and then she's given me one signed, so I'll send that.
Oh, amazing! I saw she was putting like the chapters down about one. I thought that sounds really interesting.
Mate.
Yeah.
They're good. You'll enjoy it, I'm sure. So, when you are packing for a trip to cover a story somewhere, what are your considerations, and have you ever been caught out with the wrong gear?
Honestly, my first one is weather.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I just think like weather, like, and it's a tricky one really, because 2018 I was in Syria in the summer, but you can't wear shorts there, obviously. Like, you know, it's a cultural thing. Your man can't have their legs out like that. So you're like, right, I'm not going all day in jeans, but you can't wear like, you know, you don't want to look like a little scrubber. Do you know what I mean? So I was wearing like chinos every day in the heat, but it worked. You know what I mean? It was all right. It was fine. So things like that, weather, colours of things, you know, you do want to be like, as much as I said, like, it don't really matter. You don't want to be, firstly, you don't want to accidentally bring attention to yourself, and you don't want to like maybe accidentally offend someone with something.
Culturally.
Yeah, culturally, you know, like you don't want to be walking about with, say there's big graphic design. All the lads, don't get me wrong though, all the lads over there like in Syria are all wearing like that sort of stuff. But if you're going there as a guest, you don't want to accidentally be this knobhead. I'm sure people, they wouldn't like attack you. It's not like what people think it is. They'd probably be like, oh mate, like, you know, but you don't want to upset anybody, do you? Do you know what I mean?
No.
And obviously in all different countries there's different cultural norms or whatever. So generally I just go like very like plain. Just you don't want to be honest, I dress like that anyway. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, and then also obviously we have our stuff like with like the Bulletproof vest. I do a thing where like I've all like, it's kind of it sounds dark, but it's kind of, when I used to really enjoy it, like accessorising it a bit, but it's like quite vital accessories. So you know, like a D-clip, I have a very strong like metal D-clip on the vest. in case you get hurt and you're unconscious and someone has to drag you from somewhere.
Right, nuts.
There's nothing worse than trying to grab onto a vest, like they want to be able to drag you. So it's weird you're like accessorizing.
For the worst case scenario.
yeah. And I have like an extra patch, I have a press patch, and then I have an extra patch for like my blood type. You know, some people say there's no point, but it's like, you never know, I don't know, whatever. But it's like, that will be the worst thing possible. But you're like, yeah, like accessorizing for the worst possible. So it is kind of dark, but it's not really accessorizing, but it is useful. And there is even a level of that where it's like, it's not fashion, but you want to be careful. You don't want to be wearing like a blue vest is what you're meant to wear as press. It like internationally recognizes you as press, right? If you're, say some sniper sees you through a scope and you've got like OD green vest, they might just think you're a soldier. Do you know what I mean? They might not even get, and especially if you're holding a camera or something like that, they might think you got a gun. So the blue is, you know, the blue, I always make sure. Back in the day, I didn't really think about it too much because you just have to get whatever one you can because they're very expensive. But I got a blue one now, and I say to everybody, take the blue one. You never know. You'll never know if it will save your life. You might be in someone's fucking scope, and they go, oh, press. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Not that they like you or care about. There's no rules in war. The idea of like rules is nonsense. It just doesn't exist. But they might just think there's no point shooting a press officer or press person. Do you know what I mean? It's just go and kill the soldiers. So yeah, you never know how it might help you. And in terms of like other stuff, boots, I wear Doc Martens. I got a good story about that. We were me and my mate Phil, when we used to work at Voice, we did a lot of war stuff together. And we weren't really gearheads. There were like the other like war reporters that were like super interested in gear, like, yeah, you got to get these boots for this. And we were like, I don't give a fuck. We turned up at a place in like trainers, do you know what I mean? And like it got to a point where they were like, right, Vice, like, we're going to buy you some boots. So we were like, what boots do you want? We were like, let's get Doc Martens. You know, we don't know about boots, but we were like, what's cool? Doc Martens. So we go out with a Vice money, buy ourselves Doc Martens. They're like, what the fuck do you get Doc Martens for? We're like, Doc Martens, isn't it? Doc Martens on the front line. So we go out there. We're in the middle of winter in Ukraine. And we're in Avdiivka. This was before, obviously, the invasion. A lot of people don't realise, but the war was going on since 2014. So it was like 2016. We were out in East Ukraine. Hottest zone there was, Avdiivka. We're trying to get to the front, and there's this like old school war photographer. He's about 60 by now. And with war reporting, you do get some people that almost want to be damaged to talk about it all the time. You know, you see them 1,000 yards stare at the bar. Everyone that will listen, they'll tell you the most awful stories. Which I don't like that. I don't want to talk about that.
You've not seen what I've seen kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've seen shit, man. All right, mate, cool. Like, ain't we all? Do you know what I mean? I don't think you should use that as a thing. Whatever. So he's one of them, and he's like basically saying to these soldiers, there's a bus to the front. It's like we're on the front, but the very front there's a bus, like just something that the soldiers have found to rally people, rally forces. And so we're like trying to get the access. He's trying to get the access. There's three of us, and he's like basically was really rude. Was just like, I'm this guy. I was in Sarajevo. Like, I'm a hero vibe. You know what I mean? Let me on. And he goes, who are these two dickheads in Doc Martens? And we were like, all right, mate. Like, what the fuck, sort of thing. And then basically the commander just didn't like that and was like, you two, on. And he was like, the fuck? Like, do you know what I mean? And then as we go by on the bus, we like knock on the window. We're like, hey! And he's like this like super respected guy. And we were like, fuck you twat.
Yes, mate.
We were like 27, you know what I mean? And we were the dickheads in Doc Martens, and I just loved that. I was like, yes, man, fuck off, do you know what I mean?
Popular front style, mate.
Yeah, it was, you know what I mean? It was really cool, and me and Phil were laughing about that, man.
Tell us what is next for you with clothes, mate. I know you've started a project recently called Away Days. Seen the trailer for that the other day.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
I'm
sure other people.
Still. Yeah, so this new thing I'm starting is...
It's about subcultures
it's called, so it's like a series. It's separate from Popular Front. It's not war. It's basically a series we're going to do. Me and my friend Johnny Pickup, we work together a lot on Popular Front, and we're doing this together. And it's like a look at underground subcultures across the world and like various fringe communities, but without any airs and graces. You know, I find these days a lot of reporters want to be your nan, and they say like, this is bad, this is good. Our first episode is about bare knuckle, no rules, underground fighting on concrete, which is becoming really big. It's very illegal, but it's becoming really big across Europe. We've got access. I've shown you that thing we filmed at one of them, and our thought is like, so fucking what? Yeah. You know, I think if two men want to fight like that, and it's very risky, and they might die. If they want to do that, it's up to them. So we're trying to come at this thing of like, that's how it is. And it's called Away Days because it's a bit of a fuck you, because when I first started out, a lot of people were like, oh, you're like a hooligan and you should cover hooligan stuff. I don't even like football. And so mine was like, I was like, all right, away days, I'll give you a fucking away day. Like, you know, we'll show you the maddest shit you've ever seen. Another episode we're going to do about the illegal street racing scene in Japan, you know, all sorts of stuff like this.
Yeah, I saw you shouting out for a fixer in Japan.
Yeah, and we've hopefully got that sorted.
Sick.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, a lot of that, you will see there's a lot of fashion stuff involved in that. I mean, even the underground fight scene now has its own kind of style.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like certain brands like Ascari, which is like sponsors some of the events and underground events, and they have like, it's fight wear but differently. It's like real like streetwear mixed with fight wear, like, but it's practical actually, a lot of it. Like, it's actually made for people that street fight, if that makes sense, which is quite interesting.
What kind of technology or cuts or what have you done to make it?
For example, shorts will have like a better crotch so that you can get your leg high.
Okay.
Stuff like that. Like, that's why Thai boxing shorts are very high, and
yeah,
you can basically touch your head with your foot if you want.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to stop you. Whereas like your average pair of shorts, you
restricted.
Yeah, you can't do the splits or whatever. So stuff like that. And they also have like a hooligan range where they've got there's like a symbol that football hooligans have, like the H, and they say like it's on the shorts, and like if you buy them and you're not a hooligan, we'll cancel the order, like, you know, and stuff like that. And they're actually from this background, so they know stuff, you know, and that's really a cool thing, I think, you know. I actually have some of their shorts. Some of the stuff is, you know, it's not always my style, but it's a new style you can see coming out, and it's very like, it's, you know, if you see someone wearing that, they're probably not wearing it for bullshit.
Yeah,
they're probably a fighter of some sort. You know, whereas, you know, back in the day, I remember like MMA Tap Out was the MMA brand, and you'd see some bloke, you know, he's never been to a class in his life wearing Tap Out, which is fine, whatever, but I think they're trying to get away from that. Like, they're like, this is specific.
Got to be authentic.
Exactly, authentic. Yeah. So that's very interesting. And then like if you look at again like the Brazil thing I spoke about earlier, with like one gang will wear Nike, one will wear Adidas. We're going to be with the Nike group, you know, and we've got access to them. And I was saying to Johnny, I was like, make sure you're wearing Nikes. Okay. Because he don't really, you know, he wears like doesn't have many stuff like that, different styles. And he was like, fuck, all right, I have to get some Nikes and stuff like that. And I think that's really cool. But that's something we want to put into it all. Yeah. You know, I think that stuff is, it's weird, man. Being a reporter over the years and making films, you'll find editors and stuff that go, that's not interesting. I'm like, that's the most interesting. Yeah, yeah. Like, what does that tell you? It's like, that tells you everything. Yeah, yeah. These are lads, these are boys, man. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like, these are young men, and they've got other desires and other interests. They're not, okay, they might be like killers or whatever, but they're not waking up like, yeah, I want to kill today. It's a whole thing, you know, and we're trying to do that. So yeah, that's what's up next for us in that way. In terms of like clothes, we're doing Popular Front. We're doing a collaboration with 10 Foot. Don't know if you know him. He's like one of the most prolific.
It's nuts, man. There's two names. Fellas. When I drive down to London a lot, and you know, there's Helch. And there's 10 Foot. Yeah, 10 Foot. Tox is a big one as well. Insane coverage. Everywhere, mate. Yeah. Everywhere. So he's a really nice fella. We just linked up. He like messaged, a mutual friend of ours messaged like through him. He's like, I love Popular Front. He'd come up to our office one day, and we just got on. Like, you know, when you just like, similar on the same vibe. So we were like, let's do a collab. So, you know, the scarf, one half is going to be Popular Front, the other half is 10 Foot. And we have actually, we're interested, that thing I was on about earlier, the English revolutionaries, we have like this quote on it. One of the guys said, the old world is running up like a parchment in the flame. Like, it's very like romantic, but it's a very cool thing to have on the scarf, you know. And our kind of idea is like, always be innovating, do you know what I mean? The old world ain't going to last, and it doesn't matter if it goes up in flames, you know what I mean? Because there's something always new will come from it. And, you know, the world is on fire right now, but it's always something else is always coming from that. It's not like burning down to the ashes. There's always something else, do you know what I mean? And in every respect. So, yeah, he's really cool. That I think we're going to donate the money some way. He's going to donate money to wherever he wants. So, yeah, so that's the next thing for us. But yeah, we got a lot of new stuff next year, a lot of new collabs with people. But at the minute, I'm kind of, I don't know. I'm like, I see when I do something new, I just want to get it out. I'm like, whenever it's like, I'm learning to like sit on it and wait for the right time. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's one of the things that I've enjoyed most about working with you, the speed with which it goes from idea to out. You know, you'll send me something across, and it's like, I recorded this last night. And I'll I'll mix it tonight, and then it's out an hour later.
Yeah. I'm impatient, man. Very impatient.
I think that works though, dude. People
it does
feel that, you know.
If you labour on something a little bit too much, it will never be perfect.
Yeah.
You know, and actually the style with Away Days is going to be slightly different. We've really taken a lot of inspiration from old school 90s, early 2000s TV, because I feel like that was the last time when digital met analog and everything was still wild. It was before the kind of Vipers got hold of it and started making money from it. It was really wild. For example, we're filming it mostly with an FS6, great camera, FX6, sorry.
Yeah.
But we're also filming, do you remember the old VX1000 skate cameras? On a stick, It was it had a handle and you would hold it like that. Yeah, we've got one of them, so we're mixing it up, and which you think, people have done that, but the way we're doing it, it looks very unusual, and I really like it. It was really, Johnny's idea was that.
Yeah, man. I've heard you talk about this actually, that people putting cameras on gimbals and it looks like a film rather than being where you're at.
Documentaries shouldn't look like movies.
Yeah.
You know, Netflix has really done a number on that. Every fucking Netflix thing starts with this, it's a template now. You know, we want to get away from that. We don't want this drone shot, abstract comment, reenactment. Fuck all that. Do you know what I mean? We want to make something back in, how things were back in the day a bit, you know.
With feeling.
And the edges are a bit rough and, but they haven't tied everything up in a bow. You're not meant to. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You're kind of meant to leave it out there and people go, oh, I don't know what to think about that. That's the best thing. When we did Plastic Defense, our most popular front's most successful documentary, so many people I just don't know what to think about it. And I was like, that's exactly how we want to do it.
Yeah.
On one part, this bloke's a lunatic, he's making 3D printed guns. But then he makes a very good argument that, there are countries that wouldn't exist anymore, or whole Kurds wouldn't exist without firearms. Do you know what I mean? So, not to get all into that, but that's the concept we want to do. We want to have that thing where people just go, oof, I don't know what to think. Yeah. You know, and that's what you're meant to do.
Tensions, the answer's usually somewhere in between the two extremes, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
If someone gave you an unlimited budget to put together a go anywhere, do anything, work uniform, what would you be copying? We talked about Austin, the kind of nuts fabrics that
I'd probably have Stone Island skin.
Yeah.
I'd just have an exoskeleton, a Stone Island exoskeleton. Yeah, definitely.
Have you heard that brand Volleyback?
Nah.
Okay, I've seen Proper magazine posting about it.
I love Proper.
Yeah, big up them dudes.
Yeah, I first found Proper years ago. I was about 23, and I remember opening it, and they had this article where they were given a barber jacket for fishing. And so what they did, they found the world's most esoteric, successful Japanese fisherman. Yeah. Gave it to him, talked to him about fishing, and we're just how's the jacket? He's like, yeah, good. And I was like, that's brilliant. That's so much more effective than oh wow, jacket. It was just I thought that was amazing. Yeah, sorry, cut you off.
Journalism done on its own terms, I guess, which is an inspiration.
Neil's lovely, I love Neil.
Yeah,
brilliant,
top dude. Yeah. Volleyback do nuts, futuristic things they'll have 100 miles of copper woven into a jacket and these tiny little things that put heat around your body. So these I guess it's picking up the mantle where Osti left off. And I always think if I had, they're expensive, mad expensive, but and they have a 1,000-year jacket that's meant to be almost indestructible to anything. I always think
you'd go for that, would you?
Yeah, if I was trying to survive in any circumstance that the world threw at me, this is the kind of stuff that you get.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think of it from that side. I was just thinking what would look cool. Yeah. While I'm dying in the desert.
I mean, that's got to be consideration as well, because if you're going to wear it forever, then
that's true. I don't know, mate. I'll be honest. If I think about it, I don't know that, but I would love to do. I've got ideas where I would love to do a collab with a certain brand or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Reached out to Palace recently because they seem to be doing collabs with everybody. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, we could definitely do something cool. Do you know what I mean? And stuff like that. I would love to do though. I would love to do say you did a Stone Island collab, but it was the reporter's jacket. Yeah. But you could make it where everybody would like it. You know, but it would also be useful to a report. But what's useful to a report could be useful to anyone. You know, it's I know I got
what will we have on there? Hidden camera, lapel.
Little flask for alcohol problems, a bump. No. I don't know. I mean, yeah, stuff that would be super useful. I mean, it sounds kind of weird, but I don't know. You could have a fucking everyone comes with like a built-in tourniquet, you know, like so you can put it around your leg or some shit. The amount of times people end up without tourniquets when they need them, and they just bleed to death when they could have just gone, you know what I mean? Yeah. Stuff like that. I don't know. I've not thought about it too much, actually. Now I've said it. Yeah. But I think stuff like that could be cool. Do you know what I mean? It's like you could do or maybe the war reporter's jacket, because it's like maybe take it to a different level of, okay, military inspired, how about this inspired? But I also think like it will be cool for brands to start, like I said earlier, like having some balls and being like, right, here's this really edgy scene. It's like, you know, like there's a lot of scenes that will take on a brand as almost their uniform. For example, back in the day, like, you know, Stone Island was synonymous with football hooliganism. That, for example, why don't you then take on that? You know, like, for example, a lot of these no rules fighters that we've been filming with, they're really into like Gucci jackets and, you know, like that kind of streetwear. Gucci should embrace that and be like, yes, like you want real stuff, you want something real. You have to stop being scared that like some of your user base might not like that. Yeah. The way the world works now, it will be forgotten in 1 week, and then you can make another advert for them once. But in the meantime, you will have done something wicked and like really cool. Do you know what I mean? Man. And real. I'm sure like that stuff is happening. I just probably don't look out for it enough. But I do think that would be really cool though. Do you know, if they started getting really in the subcultures that take them on board, work with them. Yeah. You know what I mean?
The stories that you want to tell are already out there.
And they're wearing your brand and it means something in their culture. Well, then show the world that. Don't just make it for like some rich lady in Chelsea, because it's not just for her, it's for everybody now. Do you know what I mean? And it's for this group. So yeah, I think that would be cool.
Last question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you care about clothes?
Like 7. Yeah, I mean, it's not like crazy, but I do think it's important. I remember my granddad, God rest his soul, he said to me one time, he was like, whether you like it or not, the first thing people judge you on is how you're dressed, and they will have that. And he said, it's not right, it's not fair, but it is. And it is, you know, and it is true. People will do that. And I do think that's like an important, you know, to the day he died, he just dressed smart, you know, like he would never just, some people I think unfortunately they'll just kind of let themselves go and who gives a shit anymore. He was just, I remember he just was like, no, you have to have that, like, you know, you have to be like, and I think that's quite a nice, it's an old school thing, but I think it's quite a nice way to be. But on the other hand, I will go to the shop in like torn Adidas looking like an absolute nutter. Do you know what I mean? So I don't care that much. I don't care in the way of like the way that some people are super like exclusionary with it. They'll be like cliquey about it. But then I do care in the way that it can like really represent something that you're about and stuff like that. I really like that. Like I have some of my favourite clothes I have are like, for example, that haters gonna hate, like random independent clothes brands that have come out from something really unusual. I was given like this Shamrock Rovers Ultras t-shirt a while ago. Like I love that. Like, you know, it's things you can't just go and get it off the internet. You have to get it from some way. You have to be kind of accepted in a certain role, you know, to have that t-shirt. Like I remember I said to the Hoods Clan, those anti-fascist hooligans, I was like, oh, I really want one of the Hoods Clan t-shirts. He said, no, you only get that if you fight with us. I was like, all right, okay. I was like, maybe after the war, but no, I'm good. But yeah, so that's the thing, you know, that was an initiation for their groups. Yeah. You see that with hooligans now, you know, like they'll fight and they have to take the t-shirt off and give the t-shirt and stuff like that. But I just think super interesting things like that are like really important in the way of, it's not necessarily the clothes, it's what they represent. And that can be really interesting. And also culturally, it's a way to spread like culture across the world without being too like, it's a way to quickly get people involved, you know what I mean? Which is really important, right? Like spread people's culture, it's great.
Yeah, man. Nice one for doing it, Jake. Appreciate your time, man. Yeah, great to meet you.
Good luck with it all, man.
It's nice one, dude. Thank you. Yes, go on, Jake, lad. Top fella. Big thanks to him for coming on. Go and look up Popular Front on the socials. They are at popular.front on Instagram. Half the music that you hear on My Own Garms is by Sam Black. Sam also does 90% of the music on the Popular Front podcast episodes and documentaries, and it is always banging. Go and check him out on SoundCloud. He is son-of-old on there, Son of Old. Sick producer. Big thanks to you lot for listening in this week. If you like this episode, then send it to your mates on WhatsApp and tell them to subscribe, because there is plenty more on the way. See you on the next one, yeah?